Hello and welcome to episode 101. Yeah, learning about everything from the beginning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Estella Newbold-Brown. We're going to be talking to your young children about divorce today. I'm going to first of all welcome Estella and let her introduce herself. So can you tell us a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me here today. So yes, I'm Estella Newbold-Brown and I am a family law solicitor, partner and head of department at Amphlett Lissimore solicitors. And I have been there for about a year and a half, but I've been a qualified solicitor for about 17 years. I'm a mum and I have twins, and there will be four next month. And I've really focused on kind of how to deliver information of separating to children since having children, because I think really it's since having children and actually seeing the different ages and stages that I've kind of realised the impact of a separation on what it can have on children. And that's why I decided to write the book, to try and pull my knowledge in and help people who are going through a separation.
So tell us more about the book. So what's it called first?
So it's called Isla and Quinn, The Sunflowers, and I'll lift it up to you, although this is a podcast, so I appreciate that not everyone is going to see it. And it's actually the second book that I have published. The first one is just a story about how I met my wife, and I read it at our wedding, and I just decided to have it published. And it's very cute, and it's got penguins and seals and seagulls in it. And then yeah, thank you. But it's actually after publishing that book, because that took a long time to do. I had to find an illustrator. I had to kind of rewrite the story that I read at the wedding, edit it. And then I actually really, really enjoyed it, as well as, doing my job, looking after the twins. It's quite a nice escape for me to be focused on something that I'm really kind of passionate about. And I kind of just thought that there isn't anything out there like this book. There aren't really resources like this available to parents. And, I've got all this experience as a family practitioner, and I do want to help people. And I just thought it would be a nice idea to have my children in a book. There's a dog, Tilly, that's actually my sister's dog. So I have created the characters around real people. And it's just a book about their friend whose parents are separated, and how Isla and Quinn help their friend Jenny through the emotions that she has, and them talking to their mummy and mama, how they can help their friend Jenny. And it's got a lovely section at the back where it's got questions which parents or teachers can discuss with the child that reads the book, to help them deal with their emotions. And I also wanted there to be same-sex parents in a book, and for that to be mainstream and not to be the main focus of a book as well. And that's something else I'm kind of looking at, writing some more Isla and Quinn books about other topics, but still having a mummy and mama behind the scenes.
But it's such a beautiful book. It's so beautifully illustrated, and just I think approaches the topic of divorce in such a gentle way, without it being focused on fighting or focused on the kind of bad side of children experiencing divorce, because it isn't always about that. And I think that was something that really struck me about it.
Thank you. And I do think it's really important, because children are made up of half of each parent. So if they see their parents arguing, and if there's conflict, or if one parent is speaking in a derogatory way about the other parent, that will insult their child without the parents realizing. And I think it's really important when parents separate that, yes, they have their own needs, but their needs of their children stand far higher than their needs. And they really need to focus on their children, because it's a really tough time for them. And I just think about my twins being 4, how would you tell them? How would you deliver that information to them? How will they receive that information? And sometimes it's just by reading books like this, if you know that you're going to separate at an early stage, it can help your child to understand. So when you then separate from from your partner, their parent, you can almost kind of refer back to the book. Oh, do you remember Isla and Quinn? Do you remember what they did? Do you remember Jenny said her tummy was sad? Is your tummy sad? And you can just kind of use the book as a resource like that to help children go through this emotional time.
Absolutely. I think what struck me more than anything, so I'm a parent, my children are almost grown up now, over the age of 18, but they're not, yeah, anyway, long story. But I'm not sure that even when my kids were little, I could have understood their emotions in the way that you have in the books. Did you have to research, or is it just gut for you on how your children would react?
I'd say it's a gut for me. I wrote it thinking, how would I tell Isla and Quinn this information? Also, just viewing it from a child's perspective. And I spoke to my sister, who's an English teacher, and she read through the book, and she actually said, you know, some of the language you've used in like the first draft was too adult and it was too formal. And she said, think about how a child would feel. So I kind of placed myself in the position of a 4-year-old, although the book's kind of up to 8 years. I kind of thought about a 4-year-old because that's the age of the twins and that's the age of Jenny. And I then thought, what would they be feeling? So obviously they might have feelings of anxiety, but they're not going to say, oh, mummy, I feel anxious today. They won't recognize it. And I know that from in the past, because my parents divorced when I was 17, and I had a bit of anxiety then, and it's this kind of feeling in your tummy that you can't quite explain. So that's how I then decided to describe it in the book. And I know from the feedback that I've had from other people, because I went into my twins' nursery and I read it to the teachers there, and they said, actually, it's a good book to read to children, just not about their parents separating, but if the child's going through a difficult time, or if they're anxious, or if they're upset about something, it's a good book to help that child express their emotions. And I think as society at the moment, we're very kind of hot on mental well-being. And I think that this book is helpful for young children to express how they're feeling.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the way in which they I think we can give away bits of the book, because I think
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, should we give it away? It's a bit like saying who done it in a probably not aimed at our audience listening to this podcast. I think we might be all right. I love the way that that the twins think of something that is going to help Jenny to not feel so sad, because she's sad about not spending all of her time with both of her parents. And I love that she's not sad because she's not, it's not about one of them, it's about both of them, and not being with them both. It's, you know, it's not a taking sides situation. And then the twin solution to that is just amazing. How is that something you've used? How did you come up with that as an idea?
So I guess it's almost a distraction technique that I've learned as a parent.
I love it.
But I still do it to this day. When my son's having a meltdown, I've learned that you're meant to kind of get them to think about something from the past and use their memory, because it uses a different part of their brain. So I'm always thinking, just stop having a meltdown, you need to get in the car. What can I say? But sunflowers are my favorite flower. So I've tried to pull in everything from my life kind of into the books that I write. So sunflowers are my favorite flower, but I actually thought visually what would look good in a book, and what's everyone seen. Everyone knows what a sunflower is, and it's also really, really positive. But I wanted like a living plant that they could see grow. Because if it was just like an object that, you know, that object doesn't change, you could lose it. But I just thought with a plant and watching the plant grow, it's actually really nice because that would last a period of time. And that's why at the end, and again, it's not a spoiler, but you know, the twins draw the sunflowers growing over the period of time that they've had them. So I just thought that that was a really nice concept, and also really positive and really happy. Just thought it's a
Yeah,
really, really positive thing for her to kind of focus on.
absolutely. You cannot fail to smile when you see a field full of sunflowers. It's just
Yeah.
it's one of the best things. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I really like also that it wasn't competitive. It's not competitive growing. 'Cause
Whereas if it was my twins, they actually would. If it was their own sunflowers, they'd be like, "Well, mine's higher than yours." I know it's not. Yeah.
hoping it wasn't going to be about whether mums or dads was taller. That's a school thing, isn't it? It's like who can grow the biggest sunflower? And you're like,
Oh yeah,
oh,
absolutely. Who can get their pajamas on the quickest? Who can climb up the stairs the quickest? Everything's a competition.
yeah. And that must be the case when you've got twins as well.
Absolutely is every day. But I always win. I obviously always win.
I would hope so. I would absolutely hope so. Um, so has your experience of being a solicitor helped in writing the book, and the other way around? Has the book impacted the work that you do as a family solicitor?
Yes, I would say that it has, because I mean I've always been a member of Resolution, so I'm always concentrating on there not being any conflict, to be conciliatory, and always putting the children's needs first, because essentially they should be the main focus of a separation, to make sure that they are, you know, well looked after and provided for. And since having children, I would say I think I'm a better lawyer. And I'm not saying that you need to have children to be a great family lawyer, because you absolutely do not. And I've been doing this job for 17 years. So I've been doing it longer not having children than having children. But I would say I'm more emotionally intelligent in terms of kind of how parents feel about their children, because I think maybe before I'd be like, oh, just tell them. And I wouldn't realise,
Yeah.
you know, no, not as blunt as that. I think I would be like, oh no, you just, you know, need to tell them. But I guess I would have less experience in how to guide them through that. And I'm by no means a parenting expert, but through, you know, doing this job for as long as I have and seeing so many different families going through a divorce, but guiding them through, I've gained experience along the way. So I just think if you can give your clients as many resources as possible to make their lives easier through a separation, to make their lives less stressful, but also to make sure that the children are well looked after, that their emotional needs are looked after, and it's not going to be high conflict for them, then I just think that's the best thing. So I do think that, you know, writing this book has really, I guess it's, you know, helped me, made me a better lawyer in terms of what I'm looking at holistically. And then I've pulled on my experiences of being, you know, a teenager of divorce, kind of looking back at how my parents dealt with it and whether or not that was right, potentially was right for them at the time. But I wouldn't say that's how I would want my clients to deal with it, or tell their children. So yeah, so it's been a few decades of experience kind of pulled into this book.
Absolutely, and I think you can tell that. I think what I what I really like is it's aimed at younger children, because there are definitely books out there for older children, for perhaps kind of 8 to 12, and then kind of teenagers. But I haven't seen anything that's there for little kids, and it's almost the assumption that people don't get divorced until their kids are older, whereas
Yeah,
actually it's definitely not the case. So we have lots of clients that we work with, you know, it could be a matter of months after the child's born that sadly the relationship breaks down, you know, that's awful. But I think you do need something. You're not obviously going to use your book with some a child that's 6 months old, but I think it is relevant from a very young age, as soon as they can kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that there tends to be a focus on older children, because I think people think that they know what's going on and they understand it. But
Yeah.
actually, younger children are really clued up. They know what's going on. You know, Isla and Quinn were bought some chocolate. They knew that Grandma Sue bought them that chocolate, and I tried to hide it so they couldn't. And a couple of weeks later, they're still asking after the chocolate. So you can't actually fool them. So as much as, you know, parents think, well, we won't tell them, or we will just separate and they'll just learn from that. I would say that that isn't the right way to go about it, because they will pick up on things. And when, you know, couples say, oh, we want to stay together for the sake of the children, and just stay together until they're 18 or something, actually, my advice is, well, I don't think that that's necessarily the right thing for your child, because they look at you both as role models, as parents. And if you're sleeping in separate bedrooms, or you're, you know, on the other ends of the sofa because you don't get on, or you're arguing, or you're not touching each other, and you're not kissing in front of your children or being affectionate, then that's not a great role model for your children, because what they think is a loving marriage and relationship actually isn't. And I would say that, you know, when my parents separated, my dad during the marriage is a totally different man to who he is now, and I'm stronger to I've got a stronger relationship with him after divorcing my mum than before, I'd say. So it's yeah, you know, I think it's really important to address it with young children, and to address it in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, as you said, it's about the breakdown of that relationship. It's not about the breakdown of the relationship that the parents have with the child or children. And it's really important to focus on that. And it's something that we talk about a lot when I'm working with clients is, you know, keep the child front and center. Don't put them in the middle. Like, don't, like, oh, mum said that, dad said that there.
Yeah,
None of that nonsense. But keep them front and center of your thoughts and the decisions that you're making and how they will impact those future relationships. But you're absolutely right in what you say about not staying together for the sake of the children, because you're showing your children all the time as a role model how a marriage and a family and a relationship looks. And if your example of that is, as you say, other ends of the sofa and going out separately all the time and not really spending any time together, that's not how you would ideally want them to think of a family. And if you
absolutely.
separate, go and find someone else, another loving family relationship, that view of a family is a much better view, even if it's mum and dad doing it separately, or mum and mum, or dad and dad doing it separately. That's still a
Absolutely.
better resolution, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And I think that it's also really important to be positive about the other parent once separated. And I think
Yeah.
it's so easy to fall into the trap of kind of making, you know, sly comments, or, you know, comments that you think will go under the radar. But again, it goes back to what we said earlier, that you're then indirectly kind of insulting your child. But also, you know, and being a lawyer, unfortunately, I do see the other end of the spectrum, where there is kind of conflict between parents. But refreshingly, I was listening to a podcast, and there was Nadine from Girls Aloud, and she's got an ex-partner who's an NFL player, and he spoke so positively about her as a parent, because they're not together anymore. I was so happy. And I thought, what a great role model, what an absolutely great role model this guy is, because he's showing that you can still be so positive about the other parent, even though you're not together. And how great for that child that their parents aren't together, but that they're, you know, each parent speaks so positively about the other. It must be such a lovely, loving environment. And I know it's hard, you know, and I've not gone through a divorce, so I can imagine it's very hard. And especially if, you you know, someone's had an affair, and you know, you've got all those emotions caught up in it. But it's so important just to be positive about the other parent. It really, really is, because it can impact the child.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on, and I think that is absolutely right, because any negative feelings, or the other thing that I've noticed is not being able to speak about the other parent in, like, to the parent perhaps that you're with. So, oh, do you remember when we did that, and you get shut down?
Yeah,
And I think that being able to have those happy family memories from your younger childhood, if it's an older teen, you know, to be able to go, oh, do you remember when we all did that together? Those are lovely memories of the child's childhood that they don't want to forget, and that should be encouraged to talk about as well.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's, you know, maybe the child's mentioning that because they, you know, that was a time of their life where they felt really supported by both parents and secure.
Yeah.
And maybe mentioning that scenario is the child opening up to their parent to kind of say, oh, do you remember that? That was really good. We're here. We're in this situation now. Not necessarily saying that they're not happy, but that could be like a trigger comment by the child that I think parents need to perceive and be open to hearing. Because
Yeah.
if then the response is shutting it down, that's shutting the child down, that's shutting the memory down, that's almost kind of asking them to forget their life before, which isn't what a child wants to do. And if
Yeah.
they want to relive those happy moments, I think it's important that parents encourage them to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive positive, isn't it? That your child wants to have those conversations with you, in any
Yeah.
case, should be absolutely encouraged. I think that's a good thing. Um, Back to the book. How would you suggest parents might introduce the book to their children? Is it something that you would anticipate older children reading themselves, or is it, when I say older children, I mean like 7, 8, not
Yeah.
not 15-year-olds probably, um, or is it something that you would say is best read with a parent or teacher?
Um, so obviously it depends on the age, but the kind of the focus of the book age range is up to 8 years old. So obviously you can be independent from, well, I don't know, because my twins can't read. I think about 6. You can kind of 6, 7. You can start independently reading around that age. With my twins of an evening, because I love story time. That's actually like a treasured time for me. I love sitting down in their bedroom, and I get them each to choose a book, and then we read them together. And I have read them this book, and my approach was to read the first book and then to read this after. So I think from a young age, you don't have to be like, this book is about separation. You can just bring it in, you can just read it, and actually not even say anything about that book again. And then you could read it again, and then maybe go through some of the questions at the end. But the questions at the end are what's quite key for this book. Knowing about the story, but then the parents remembering the questions, and then maybe when you're in the car driving them to football practice or to ballet or going to see their grandparents, maybe ask some of those questions. Oh, do you remember that book we read? How do you think Jenny was feeling that day? Why was her tummy upset? How's your tummy? And that's the key with this book, is to, once children have read the book, they will remember it, but it's the reinforcement after, and then to ask questions with them. So even if they're older and they read it on their own, it's for the parent to then raise those questions with the
Yeah.
older child another time, to kind of gauge their feelings and gauge their reaction.
Yes, to still have it as a conversation rather than just, here's a book. go off and
Absolutely.
go off and read it. And I think it's a good book for where you have friends who, you know, who are in Isla and Quinn's situation, who are friends who have, you know, friends whose parents are going through divorce, because it helps them to understand what's going on, what's happening as well, which I think is really difficult to understand. And I think particularly with young kids that perhaps haven't come across it in so much.
Absolutely. And One thing I want to do with my twins is just make sure that they're aware of kind of as much as possible. So, like when they were 2, they knew what a drag queen was, and Quinn after
Brilliant.
yeah, they do, and they've been to DragCon twice. So we went in January, went January before, so they absolutely know what a drag queen is. So if they see a drag queen, they're not shocked. They love drag queens because I do as well. So it's a slight influence from me there.
Each
Um,
their own.
but also things like being at nursery. Quinn and Isla loved Diwali, so when they came home from nursery, we would play Rama and Sita. Probably, like, we're still playing it now. They ask for it, so I guess like part of like nurturing children and growing up is exposing them to lots of different things and educating them. And children, like, focusing on their emotional intelligence can only be a good thing. And when 1 in 2 people get divorced, which is a sad statistic, it's likely that their friends' parents are going to separate, that people around them are going to separate.
Yeah.
And if they're kind of nurtured from an early age to be accepting and to learn things about it, I can only see that as a good thing.
Absolutely, totally agree. That made me laugh about Diwali, because my son, when he was at nursery, he's 20 now, he's not going to forgive me for saying this, but anyway, when he was at nursery, came home and said, I've decided that I want to celebrate Diwali from now on.
Oh,
And I
I
went,
love it.
righto. I was like, so you're not having Christmas anymore? He's like, no, I want Christmas as well. It's like, nah, it doesn't work like that. But it was because Diwali had come first.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I'd like a bit of that. Yeah, no, mate. Can't have it all.
Pick the best bits out of all religions and just be celebrating all year.
Have all the festivals going on. But it did make me laugh at the time. I was like, oh yeah, brilliant. Nice. But I think you're absolutely right. I think the more they're exposed to and the more that they can understand things that other people might be dealing with, and that, everybody's got their own stuff going on, and you don't have to think of it in those terms, but to kind of introduce those sorts of themes from a young age, I think is fantastic. And I very much enjoyed reading your book, so thank you
Oh, thank you.
for sending it across. So coming to the end of our time together, is there anything that you'd like to add? And also, could you tell everybody where they can get hold of your book if they think it might be useful for themselves, their kids, their friends' kids, etc.?
Absolutely. So yes, you can get it on Amazon. It's just stocked on Amazon because it's self-published. So you can find it if you type in Isla and Quinn, the Sunflowers, and it should pop up as a yellow and green book with 2 very cute children on it and 2 cute sunflowers and a dog. And my name is Estella Newbold-Brown, so hopefully you can find it that way. But I would say the kind of key takeaway from this book, and just from speaking with your children, if you are separating, is just to make sure that your children feel loved when you separate, and you make sure that they know it is not their fault. I think if you forget everything we've discussed on this podcast today, just take away those 2 key things. And if you kind of apply that in your parenting, then you are kind of looking after your children the best that you can if you separate.
That's beautiful. What a lovely way to end it. And if you are interested in getting hold of a copy of Estella's book, the link is in the show notes. I'm pointing downwards. If you're listening on the podcast, you won't have a clue what I'm doing. But it's in the show notes. Please click on it. Please get hold of the copy, because it's absolutely beautiful book. And Estella, thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode.
Thank you.